So today we have a special guest, Acharaya Dharana, and I'd just like to say a few words of introduction, and then we'll loose him to share whatever he feels to share with us. Dharanaji has came to Ananda in 1990, and he spent about 4 years in Palo Alto, and then he spent around 10 years in Assisi during the time when Swamiji spent quite a bit of time there, helping to establish the Assisi community. And then shortly after Swamiji arrived here in India, he came and was in the very early chaos of the Ananda invasion, and was involved with setting up the ashram in Gurgaon and many of the adventures that they had there when Swamiji arrived. And now he lives in the Pune community. He is a scientist. He is a disciple and a friend, and we welcome you to Noida. So please.
Good morning, great souls. It is an honor to be here, and it is I'm delighted and very appreciative to see all that you have done in Noida. I was mentioning with Vijay last night that I was there at the very beginning. I believe it was a satsang that Swamiji gave, and Swamiji had been giving discourses in Delhi and in Gurgaon, and suddenly we went to Noida, and we had like 2 or 3 times the number of people show up that we had been used to in Gurgaon and Delhi. So right away we decided we've got to do something here in Noida. It's got to be, we need to reach these souls, because there's, just as Yogananda came to the West in response to all the call of potential saints in America, Ananda needed to be here because of all the potential saints here today in this room. When I was thinking of what I could share with you today, I was thinking, well, what would be the most inspiring thing that I could say to you? And one of the things that came to me, this is going to be a little bit of a smorgasbord of little bits of inspiration throughout my spiritual journey. So bear with me if it's not as completely following a particular thread. But one of the things that I appreciated the most about India was that I had the great, great blessing of seeing the spiritual side of India first. And I realized when I lived as a devotee in Assisi, Italy, that I had no idea what it meant to be an American until I was living surrounded by Europeans, and I could see, by the contrast, that's what it means to be American. And so here I am, an American scientist, coming to tell you what spiritual depths you have in India. And my first experience of India was on a pilgrimage. It was on my first year within Ananda. I had the great blessing of being guided by Nayaswami's David and Asha and Durga and Madhura. And they were all leading pilgrimages back in those days. And I had received Kriya Yoga shortly before coming to India. As a sort of a special dispensation. I wasn't quite ready for it, but Asha said, you'll get there sooner or later, so I'm going to give it to you now so that you'll have the chance to practice Kriya in all these holy places. And it was a great, great blessing. I'm so thankful that she did that. We went to all the holy places in our line of masters, Puri, Calcutta, didn't make it to Babaji's cave, but so many other places. And in each of those places, I got to experience for myself, taste inside the joy, the bliss that each of the holy saints had found in these particular places, because they leave those vibrations in those places. And then there were some living saints as well. My Babaji wish, there's those of you who are Kriyabans already know that there's a Babaji drink towards the end of it. You get to make a wish. Well, my spiritual wish was, I want to meet Mother Teresa. I knew that there were other pilgrimages that had gone before us that it just didn't work out, and others where it did work out. And so I wanted to meet her. And when we got into this holy woman's presence, first I was very surprised that she wasn't speaking. I mean, we went to a morning mass, and I think, she's such a celebrity, she's known all over the world. I would have expected that she would be the one giving the discourse and so on. But no, in the Catholic Church, there's this distortion that's crept in where the divinity within women is not honored as much. And that it's an artifact of going through dark ages, and the whole planet went through that, and I can't blame the Catholic Church that much. Anyway, she sat humbly in the back, and this unknown priest, a male, was giving this communion ceremony, and she went up like everyone else and received communion. But afterwards, she met with pilgrimage groups. And what do you say when you get in front of a saint? And we were wondering what to say. But on her wall, there was a poem from St. Francis, attributed to St. Francis. And actually later, they found it in the journals of William the Conqueror. So it was actually coming from Master, but everyone thought that it was St. Francis's poem because it's so beautiful and it had St. Francis's vibration in it, a vibration of peace and joy. And it was something about, Lord, where there is hatred, let me sow thy love. And I hope you've heard. There's also a song that Swamiji wrote based on those basic words. And so we realized, we could sing that song that Swamiji wrote. And so we sang that song to Mother Teresa. It was beautiful, it was perfect. But one of my deepest experiences of the spirituality that is India, I think you all know that basically every religion of the world had its roots here in India. Even Christianity, it's not universally known, but it's been well documented that when in the 13 years that are missing from the Bible, he came to India. And he visited the three wise men that had visited him as a child, and he learned from them. So the wealth of India is not in its politicians or the huge population or how great the programmers are from India or any of that. It's the saints that have lived here and put their vibrations in the soil. And one of my experiences that really brought the message home to my scientific mind was an experience that I had when we visited a place called Sarnath. It's outside of Varanasi. And of course we went to Lahiri Mahashaya's home as close as we could get. We couldn't get in past the door. It wasn't the right day for that. But we visited many holy places at Anandamayi's ashram in Varanasi. And then we came to Sarnath. And right away, because I've been going deep in all these holy places, I wanted to feel the vibrations of Buddha before I left. And someone who'd been there before had mentioned that, the bones of the Buddha are still there. And I thought, the vibrations are going to be accessible. That's the place to be. Find the bones, meditate there, go deep, feel his vibrations. That was my agenda. So there was a beautiful museum. There's some stupas that you see on the back of all the currency notes that are in that museum. But I wasn't that interested. So I went outside, and it's this huge park-like area. And somewhere in that huge park-like area was the bones of the Buddha. And there was a guide, and so I asked him, well, can you show me where the bones of the Buddha are? And he said yes, but he was so used to the regular tourists that he thought that I meant, well, please show me every significant, artifact on these grounds, and then show me the bones of the Buddha. Whereas I just meant, never mind anything else, just show me the bones of the Buddha. So, a little disagreement there, but I didn't want to be impolite. Anyway, he was walking me around the ground and pointing out, how this pile of rubble used to be the dining room, and this pile of rubble was where this particular disciple of Lord Buddha had been. All these piles of rubble that I could care less about, frankly. But I started feeling something inside my heart, and it felt like something holy was nearby. I'm not sure where. But as we were walking around, and another pile of rubble, I started realizing it was like, whatever it was that was holy was getting closer. And it was getting further, and it was getting closer. It reminded me of a game I used to play as a child, where some of us would hide something and say, now you're getting warm, and now you're ice cold, and they'd eventually find it. So as I'm walking around listening to this guy, sort of, but mainly listening to my heart and feeling, well, am I getting closer and further? And we got closer and closer and closer, and then we were neither getting closer nor further. And that stayed for a little while. I thought, and I noticed that we were walking on a circular path at that moment, and there was this humble little stone in the center of that circular path. So I asked the guide, are the bones of the Buddha buried under that stone? The answer was yes. And so I thanked him as gracefully as I could, and I just abandoned him in his tour and set to meditate by that stone. But afterwards, my the joy, the bliss that the Buddha had found was just as real, just as tangible as the joy from all these other sins. But afterwards, I was thinking, with my rational mind, because I grew up with an over-intellectual mind, and I've been trying to balance that all my life. I'm not completely there yet, but I started thinking, okay, Buddha lived like 2.5 millennia ago, somewhere in there. I don't know the numbers exactly. I'm not sure if anyone knows the numbers exactly, but it's been a long time. And I was able to feel his vibrations from a couple hundred yards away. That whoever created this universe must have really, really valued the attainment of Lord Buddha in order to have made me in a way that 2.5 millennia later, and a couple hundred yards away, I could feel, I could sense that presence, and I could tune into it, and I could discover things that I had not known with any exterior clues. And that really changed my perceptions of what this world is and what is valuable. And I started thinking, I had a successful career as a scientist. My wife used to call me a rocket scientist. It's not exactly true. I was making something called a flight simulator, not for the people who wanted to learn how to fly airplanes, but for people who wanted to learn how to fly satellites. And it was really interesting, but there was still something missing inside. And I realized that something missing inside was the divinity. It's there inside of us, but I didn't know how to find it. And I thought of all the achievements that I attained in my brief career. It was maybe 10 years going at this point. And I thought, of all those achievements, how many people will remember them 10 years after I'm gone? 100 years after I'm gone? And I thought, no way. Realistically, yes, I did a few things, and yes, they were helpful to a few people. But in terms of lasting value to the Creator Himself, it really changed my perspectives on life. And it also gave me sort of a tangible interior proof that Kriya Yoga works. This is a real path. I think if I had just gone to Sarnath without having practiced Kriya Yoga in so many places, I wouldn't have been anywhere near sensitive enough to feel that, to sense that. So to me it was, and since then I've tried to live my life according to that insight, that this is not the world that it seems to be. There's something else going on. And we all get that clue. I mean, if this were the world that it appears to be, then when we get something from a friend, we would feel joyful. Oh, we've got that something. But somehow when we give that something, if it's a meaningful something, we feel better than we do when we're receiving. And so this world is not what it appears. One way that Swamiji put it in one of his beautiful songs, he said, the words go, "Help me see that happiness comes not from wanting more, but less." The more we live a life of simple living and high thinking, the more that we are blessed by that. And the more that we can put our, engage ourselves both inwardly and outwardly, the deeper we'll be able to go in that. I had, Vijay, do I need to end by 10:30 or do I have like half an hour? Okay. I want to honor the time limits. Another deep experience that I had came in a seclusion that I had. And in this particular seclusion, it was the first time I had access to the manuscript that Paramahansa Yogananda had wrote of the Gita. I think all of you know from the pages, the accounts in the New Path, how when Yogananda wrote that book, he said, millions will find that. I know, I have seen it. And so I wanted to get my hands on that. And some friend of mine had compiled all of the articles that appeared in a magazine back in the 40s, compiled all those articles into like a book form. So I could read through at least those articles. It wasn't as clear as the Gita that we have today, but it was my first chance at it. And I spent that seclusion, it was a week-long seclusion, going deep into scripture, going deeper in my practices, as deep as I can. I started out with a very, very worthy goal. If you get a chance to do seclusion, I recommend seclusion for everyone. But a worthy goal in your daily practice or in your seclusion is to try to perfect your practices. And in every little detail, and I found some hesitancy to do the energization exercises. I would do them all the more energy and strength and all the more attempting to do them perfectly. Exactly, I didn't have a video of Swamiji at the time during that seclusion, but watching Swamiji do them is a great way of tuning into that. Anyway, so it was going deep and trying to perfect my Kriya. And I also got a new toy to play with the first or second day of that seclusion. I got into Acharaya Mudra for the first time, which is recommended for everyone. If you're not already doing it, Acharaya Noida is wonderful. Adds another depth to it. So I had a new toy to play with. I was going deep, and I just kept going as deep as I could. And the more I got parts of my egoity out of the way and just could offer myself completely with my heart, wholeheartedly. There's a prayer that Jesus, somebody asked him, well, what's the highest teaching in all the scriptures? And his answer was very simple. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and all your strength. And Yogananda later related, because Jesus was talking in an age where they didn't understand energy. All your strength means all your energy, all your life force, all the prana within you. So I was trying to offer myself to God over and over, as deep as I could. And I would go, maybe just 3 rounds of Kriya, trying to perfect perfectly. After each round, I would say, how perfectly was that? No, I didn't go deeper. I need to perfect this still. I got to a place where I was deeper than I'd ever been. And I got to a place where I realized I've been here before. And I knew it sure wasn't in this lifetime. And I realized this is not the first lifetime I've been practicing Kriya. And I imagine that's true for most of you, perhaps all of you. I think we're drawn back to our Guru because we've had that connection before. It takes a lot of lifetimes to find a way all the way back to God. So again, it was it substantiated the realization that the more I give myself inwardly, the more I can go deep. And after 24 years on this path, I can say, with experience, that it's not the years alone that matter. Yogananda used to tell people at Mount Washington, he would point out, there are many rats living on Mount Washington. It's not the fact that you're living here with me that makes a difference. It's how deep you go inwardly and how deeply you serve outwardly. How engaged are you outwardly in serving? One of my deepest blessings of serving outwardly was when I had the great privilege of I was in Swami Kriyananda's presence as he was writing the Bhagavad Gita. My wife, for those of you who don't already know me, my wife was Swamiji's nurse. And it made sense for the nurse to be in the home. And so I got to be there by proxy just because I was the husband. So I had really good karma that way. But as Swamiji would come down with all these inspiring pages and say, I wrote another 10 pages, you must read them, you must read them. It occurred to me, partly for selfish reasons, but still, even doing things, even if there is a hint of selfishness in there, it's still a good thing. I told Swamiji, Yogananda said, millions will find power through this book. A book of this importance deserves a really good index. And if I get started now while you're still writing it, then I'll have more of a chance to build that really good index. And so it was a way of engaging the scientific mind and intellect that I've been blessed with as a way of serving my Guru to my fullest extent. And I didn't realize that I'd been way more than I could chew. I'd never built an index before for any book. I'd been involved with publications in CC and also in India, a few book covers and laying out the pages and so on, but I'd never done index. I'd never done anything of that kind. And there was a big problem in that book because every time I would read a page that Swamiji had written, I'd say, okay, this, and that need to go in the index. And then I'd read the page again and make sure I got them all. And I'd say, oh, no, I didn't get them all. That, and that, and that also need to go in the index. And no matter how many times I read that page, I would find another batch. And I felt like this is never going to end. But I was, just putting all my energy, night and day, as little as I could bear to sleep, and I held on to God and Guru, because if you don't hold on to God and Guru, when the tests come, you're really sunk. So, and by putting out the best that I could do, grace came. My wife saw what an effort I was putting into this. She was trying to do a seclusion upstairs in Swamiji's home. Swamiji was well, his health was good. It was time off for her as Swamiji's nurse. She was trying to do a seclusion, but she saw how much effort I was putting out. And she said, well, maybe I can help. She ended up doing about maybe 50%. It ended up being also a software development project of taking one tool for index building, another tool of index building, and building a bridge between the two so they talk together, and all the tools that I was building the index with could be used to actually compile it and make it neat and pretty and all that stuff. Anyway, it was the greatest blessing, one of the greatest blessings of this lifetime, because I was so completely engaged with heart, mind, soul, and strength in serving God and Guru. And also because, let's face it, I was spending a month and a half, 2 months with a beautiful scripture. It's a great blessing. I teach meditation in Mumbai regularly, and we have a certain suggested course curriculum. I was very surprised. Somebody asked in an online webinar that Swamiji gave. Somebody asked him with a dialing question, I've read the autobiography of the yogi. What do you suggest as the second book? What should I read next? His answer was the Bhagavad Gita. Because it's so deep, and it's got all of our teachings there. And Swamiji actually told me, maybe he was being kind, I don't know, but he said it was a good index too. So, but don't read it for the index. Read it for what's the inspiration that's in there. And one of the most important aspects of that book is that it makes the spiritual journey feel possible, achievable. I can do this. I get that message from reading that book more than any other book I've ever read. And if we feel like we can't get there, we can't do this, it's too big a battle, we'll never get there. You've got to give it your all, and you've got to at least affirm with body, mind, and soul that I may not get there, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my part. I'm going to show up, I'm going to meditate every day, I'm going to go as deep as I can, and I'm going to serve inwardly and outwardly as deeply as I can. One of my most recent ways of serving Swamiji still is because I know Italian quite well, I translated and added subtitles to Swamiji's last discourse. I imagine many of you have already seen that. If you haven't, I recommend it. It's a beautiful discourse. But I got to, that was a way of spending time with Swamiji's vibration and going deep in his words and saying, okay, what's the best way to put this into English? Because his last discourse, of course, was in Italian. And I did that a couple years ago, not too long after Swamiji left his body. But I started recently doing his next to last discourse, also in Italian, a lot more in it. And in that discourse, there's something that I hadn't heard Swamiji say before. And you'll get the subtitles. I'm going to post it on YouTube and all that. But one of the things that Swamiji said that I'd never heard him say, he said that there's truly only two things that anyone needs to find God. Can you guess what they are? Think about it a little bit. One of them, he said, was to transcend every last little scrap of ego. And I'm not going to say too much about this today. There's a book, Sadhu Beware, and there's a chapter in there on how to become an ego detective. And they're like, I'm not sure if it's that chapter or the one after or before, but in there's like 20 or 30 different things that you can do to help transcend your ego. But the other thing he said was that we need to love God, not only but with body, mind, and soul, like Jesus had said, and heart and strength, but to overcome. We can't really love God until we overcome all these other little desires. And so he recommended building mentally a bonfire every night. I heard him say this many times, but I didn't really realize the importance of it. Mentally build a bonfire and search through your heart and see, is there anything that I'm wanting still other than God? And then take that desire that's there and just cast it with as much energy as you can into that bonfire. Swamiji described this as a real battle, because some desires you sort of hang on to a little more. It takes a lot of years of practice. But he said, it's been a long battle, but I can now say that there's no other desire there but God. And as an over-intellectual who struggled with developing devotion, that meant a lot to me. He also said another very encouraging thing. He said that when you overcome all these desires for other things, it's like when Yogananda talks about, he defines concentration as removing your attention from all the other things so that you can focus it on one thing. If we remove our desires from all those other things that life puts in front of us and advertising billboards put in front of us, if we can remove our desires from all those things, then our love for God will automatically be there. That was very encouraging also. I think to honor your commitments, I should end pretty soon. I want to end with a poem from Yogananda that I heard for the first time just a couple days ago. 24 years on the path, first time I heard it a couple days ago. And I am really, really loving this poem. So, and it's a deep one. It's like, where has that been? This, Davy shared this with me, and I'm not sure, I know that Davy and Jyotish will be in the NCR for a couple more weeks before they go. And I expect that Davy will probably share this in one of her discourses. But I'm not sure if you're going to be there for those discourses, so I'm going to share it today, just in case. And if you get it twice, no problem. This is called Breathe in Me. Breathe in me the way to love you, that I may learn to faultlessly love you. Pour me the wisdom wine by which I become intoxicated with you. Whisper in my ears of silence the way to be with you always. Speak to my wandering senses and lead them back to your sanctuary within. Call the marauding mind and counsel it how to retrace its steps unto your home. With your silent eyes, just look at me, and I will know where to find you. You may hide behind the ocean. You may hide behind delusion. You may hide behind life. You may hide behind dualities. You may hide behind theological conundrums. You may hide behind unanswered prayers. But you cannot hide behind my love. For in the mirroring light of my love, you are revealed.